It looks like the Republicans are heading toward an open convention because it looks like nobody's going to get the necessary delegates. The question we ought to ask ourselves, though, what's the major problem confronting America? And I think the voters say it's the mounting debt, the enormous federal debt and the deficits we're running. And why don't we look for a candidate who is the best able to deal with that massive amount of money and deal with the intricacies of the federal government? Do we need somebody who makes people mad, who alienates great swaths of the American people, who has made his colleagues mad on everything that he's done? Or do we need somebody who's a uniter, not a divider? Well, John Kasich from Ohio, governor of Ohio, is running third among those candidates. But he's the only candidate who's leading Hillary Clinton in the national polls. Will that be a factor if there's a contested convention this summer?
The Republican race seems to have come down to just two men, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. But Kasich is still on the campaign trail making his case. Dale Hurd has the story.
Even after his loss in Wisconsin to Ted Cruz, Donald Trump remains the leader for the GOP nomination. Barring something unexpected, Trump should be the delegate leader going into the GOP convention. And both Cruz and Trump want Ohio Governor John Kasich to drop out because they believe they can win his delegates. Trump argues that Kasich has lost every race so far except his home state of Ohio.
Here's the problem with Kasich. First of all, I happen to think he takes votes away from me more so than Cruz. But Sean, he's won for 31.
Yeah.
Okay? Thank you.
Actually,
he's won.
If you add on the contest, it's more than 31, but yeah.
No, I think it's more. It's probably 33 if you add on the islands and everything else, but he's won for 31, probably 33.
But even though he's a distant third in delegates, Kasich is still polling the best against the likely Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump's weakness is not only a high unfavorable rating, above 60%, but that polls have shown he trails Hillary Clinton in 11 of 12 target states that will determine the outcome in November. Trump does the worst against Clinton. She leads him by an average of nearly 11 in the Real Clear Politics average of polls. The third-place GOP candidate, John Kasich, does best, leading Hillary by 6, while Cruz trails her by 3. And Kasich has shown no signs he's ready to roll over.
Donald Trump said that I need to get out of the race because I'm getting his voters. Well, I've got news for him. I'm going to get a heck of a lot of his voters.
John Kasich is a bit of a maverick, and he's done things differently from other Republicans, and so that may have a special appeal.
But how accurate is the polling that shows Kasich would do the best against Clinton? Carlin Bowman, a public opinion analyst at the American Enterprise Institute, cautions that these polls are not necessarily accurate because it's still a long way until the November election.
But polls have very little predictive value about national contests at this early stage. They usually aren't very reliable until about 100 days out from a campaign.
But none of that is stopping the feisty Kasich. He may be way down in the delegate numbers, but he's still spoiling for a fight.
I'm not a marshmallow or a pincushion. You want to take a whack at me? Let's get it on.
Sources say Kasich's strategy is to remain alive until a contested convention, hoping to go in with 500 delegates or more, and then win over the other convention delegates with a positive message. As crazy as it sounds, some Republican insiders have said Kasich just might pull it off. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Everybody keep in mind, if somebody wins a delegate in a primary or a caucus or whatever, that delegate is locked in for one ballot only. After the first ballot, it's open season. And the delegate can go wherever he or she feels like going. And at that point, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure, and these polls will come down. Trump now is behind Hillary 11 points in the national average, 11 points. And that 38% against her 49%, assuming Hillary is the Democratic nominee. So she would beat him in a walk because women are mad at him. And that makes a big difference. Okay. Then Cruz, Well, he's tapped out, but he's hit some high spots, but he hasn't come close to 50% of anything. So these guys are winning on the margin. Now, Kasich hasn't won but one state, and that was his own in Ohio. But at the same time, who is the uniter in his state who brought the Republicans and the Democrats together, who didn't make people mad, who has shown responsibility and an even temperament? Well, he's the man. So in an alternate world, after the first ballot is over, keep your eyes on the prize from Ohio. I remember some years ago, there was a guy named Bob Taft, who was a senator. He was running against Dwight Eisenhower, and he didn't have a chance. But they used to sing, "I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I overlooked before." That was the Ohio song about Taft, who didn't stand a chance against the hero from World War II. But nevertheless, watch what happens in Ohio this year. Well, in other news, a former congressman from Virginia, Frank Wolf, says the Obama administration is refusing to recognize that the United States is in a global conflict against radical Islam. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau.
Thanks, Pat. With the rise of religious persecution in key regions around the world, the Family Research Council brought together a panel of experts, and they warned that persecution by Islamic radicals is also tied to the growing threats to national security here in the United States. Abigail Robertson brings us that story.
Religious freedom is a far-off dream for many Christians facing daily persecution.
The life of religious minorities, and especially believers and Christians, are miserable in Pakistan. We have been persecuted, and we are treated as a second and third class citizen in Pakistan.
Horrific events like the Taliban's Easter attack keep happening, and Christians see little to no protection from their governments.
The government still not doing what is needed in Pakistan. And right now, it's not a matter of only religious liberty, freedom. It's a matter of life and death.
Several experts on religious freedom met in Washington to discuss how global religious persecution affects the United States. Former Congressman Frank Wolf says this is a national security issue for the United States, and Congress has got to wake up and take action.
The administration and the Congress has to deal with it, or else some very bad things are going to happen in the world.
Wolf says he agrees with the Pope that we are in World War III.
We are in World War III, and so the Congress should be dealing with this. Forget the administration, holding extensive hearings, bringing people in, bringing the best political minds in, the best military minds in, and dealing with this.
He also says there is an undeniable connection between the string of terror attacks around the world.
There is a connection between Boko Haram. He pledged it to ISIS. There is a connection to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There is a connection with what's taking place in Libya. I mean, we saw what took place in France. We saw what took place in San Bernardino.
Panelist Tina Ramirez started a group called Hardwired Global, which educates leaders on religious freedom and encourages them to fight to change laws in their countries that oppress people of minority religions.
You see for the first time in Iraq's history this movement for religious freedom beginning to emerge. What we saw since we've been training leaders throughout Iraq is that they are actually being inspired. They actually have developed a greater appreciation for people of different faiths and for the freedom of people of other faiths to practice their religion however they want.
Although it feels like a helpless situation, the panelists are encouraged by the fact that they are making a difference in the lives of the people they are reaching. Reporting from the Family Research Council in Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. Pro-life activist David Daleiden says agents with the California Department of Justice raided his home and confiscated undercover Planned Parenthood videos. Last summer, Daleiden released those videos exposing Planned Parenthood officials involved in the sales of baby body parts. Daleiden said on Facebook that the actions against him by the California Attorney General are politically motivated, pointing out Kamala Harris has taken campaign contributions from Planned Parenthood and is running for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. Daleiden argues the department is ignoring crimes by Planned Parenthood, saying agents did not take documents that he says show the abortion provider was involved in the illegal handling of fetal tissue. Well, country music stars and fans are mourning the death of music legend Merle Haggard. He died yesterday on his 79th birthday after battling pneumonia for months. In a story on the 700 Club back in 2000, he talked about his life of bar fights, broken marriages, and a prison sentence despite being raised as a Christian. He said it was when he was locked up in prison that God showed him a new direction for his life. From then on, Haggard committed his life and music to God. You can see that interview and hear about Haggard's work on a gospel album on cbnnews.com. Well, people who consume a lot of processed carbs like snack foods, sweets, and sugary drinks could face higher risks of breast and prostate cancers. Researchers found people who ate more of those foods were much more likely to get those cancers. Health Day reports the researchers say their study doesn't prove there's a link between those foods and those types of cancers, but they do say it's a good reason to cut processed foods out of your diet and eat more vegetables, whole grains, and other healthy natural foods. Pat, sounds like good advice there.
Well, it sounds like we're kind of like one note Sally, but I mean, it's just over and over and over again. Processed foods being sold by our major food processors are killing us. They're making us fat and they're making us unhealthy, and we've got all these pathologies that come along with it. Later on in this program, we've got a doctor who's going to tell us about his take on how come America is sick so often from so many diseases, most of which we ingest through the mouth.